Hello, I'm Jessie, and welcome back to the Happiness Hippi podcast. There are ordinary words that carry far more pressure than they appear to, and should may be one of them. We use it so casually that it often passes unnoticed. I should be more successful, or I should be less sensitive. The essay we're exploring today, The Burden of Should, Letting Go of Inherited Expectations, asks us to stop treating that word as harmless and begin listening to what it reveals. I'm joined by the author, whose essay we're exploring today. What interested me immediately is that this is not an argument against responsibility. It is asking which shoulds arise from conscience, care and integrity, and which are inherited expectations that have lived inside us for so long that we mistake them for our own voice.
It's good to be here, Jessie. Some shoulds are practical and necessary. If I am ill, I should seek medical help. If I have made a promise, I should take it seriously. Those shoulds are connected to health, dignity, honesty, and care. The difficulty begins when should starts regulating identity. For example, I should not disappoint my family. Such a statement may sound responsible, but they can conceal fear, shame, people-pleasing, and the desire to remain acceptable. A should that cannot survive honest examination may not be wisdom. It may be obedience disguised as responsibility.
The question you use to examine it is very direct. Whenever you hear yourself say should, you ask, so why don't you? In the essay, that becomes inquiry rather than punishment. It interrupts vague guilt and asks for something more precise. If I say I should rest, why am I not resting? If I say I should change careers, what is stopping me?
Exactly. The question asks the word to explain itself. Should often creates pressure without clarity. We feel guilty, inadequate, or behind, but we have not examined whether the expectation is sensible or genuinely ours. The answer may reveal a practical obstacle, or it may reveal fear. I may say I should write more, but what I really fear is exposing my work to judgment. I may also discover that I do not want the thing at all, only the identity attached to wanting it.
That last possibility is uncomfortable because it asks us to admit that some aspirations may be borrowed. We may have spent years saying we should want a certain life because it was presented as respectable and successful. The essay calls these inherited expectations. They come from family, culture, religion, education, relationships, institutions, and the general atmosphere of the world that shaped us. They are not always imposed by one person. Sometimes they simply feel like the way life is done.
That is why Martin Heidegger's idea of das Man, often translated as the they, is useful. He was describing the anonymous social voice that tells us how one lives, what one values, and what success looks like. It's the pressure of the crowd, even when no specific crowd is present. The they speaks through ideas about the right way to live. Those instructions sound normal, which is what makes them powerful. A person can spend decades inside a borrowed script without realizing how little of it was consciously chosen.
That connects with Emerson's line, envy is ignorance, imitation is suicide. Imitation becomes destructive when we build an entire life around a model that does not reflect who we are. Because the model is socially approved, we may receive praise while becoming increasingly absent from our own lives.
Precisely. This is not an argument for rebellion. Rejecting every expectation simply because it comes from outside is no more thoughtful than obeying every expectation. The task is discernment. Which expectations protect truth, care, dignity, and responsibility, and which keep us loyal to an image that other people find convenient?
John Paul Sartre's idea of bad faith takes this further. He argued that human beings often deny their freedom because freedom brings responsibility. It is easier to say, I have no choice, than to admit that another path may exist and that choosing it would be frightening. Should can become the language we use to hide from that freedom. I should stay, or I should be grateful. Sometimes those statements are true, but sometimes they protect us from acknowledging that we are choosing the familiar because the alternative carries uncertainty.
Yes, although real circumstances matter. Money, illness, family duties, safety, and limited opportunities can constrain a life. Freedom does not mean conditions disappear, but even within limits, we may have more agency than our language allows us to see. We may not be free to leave immediately or change careers tomorrow, but we may be free to admit what is no longer acceptable and begin preparing another direction. We may not control others, but we can stop organizing our identity around their approval.
That is where authorship becomes important. Living for yourself does not mean ignoring other people or abandoning responsibility. It means refusing to build an entire life around expectations you have never examined.
That is correct. Authorship begins when we tell the truth about what is shaping our choices. Sometimes we are acting from care. Sometimes we are acting from fear. Sometimes we are honoring a commitment, and sometimes we are protecting an identity. If I say, I should call my friend, perhaps I have been distracted and need to act on what I value. If I say, I should always be available, the source may be fear of being disliked. Those two statements sound similar because both concern care, but their roots are completely different.
That brings us to healthy and toxic shoulds. A healthy should may still be difficult. It may ask something of us that we do not feel like doing. The difference is that it connects us to a value we consciously recognize. A mature life cannot be built entirely on preference.
Exactly. If I have caused harm, I should apologize. If I have accepted responsibility, I should honor it. These duties do not erase freedom. Instead, they help freedom become responsible. The real question is whether a should comes from conscience or conformity. A healthy should points towards repair, care, honesty, health, or integrity. A toxic should often carries shame, resentment, fear, or the pressure to perform for an unseen judge. It may keep us acceptable, but it does not make us whole.
The examples in the essay make that distinction clear. I should check on my friend may arise from love. I should always be available may arise from fear. I should eat better may come from respect for the body. I should look a certain way may come from comparison and contempt.
It does, Jesse. That is why examining the source is more useful than trying to ban the word. When should appears, we can ask whether it came from care, fear, conscience, comparison, habit, or inherited expectation. We can ask whether it reflects a value we consciously hold or a rule we absorbed before we were old enough to question it. Vague guilt rarely produces meaningful action. It usually creates pressure or self-criticism. Clarity gives us a better chance of responding intelligently. Once we understand what is behind the resistance, we can decide what the next step is.
I like the way some shoulds change form through that process. For example, I should see a doctor becomes I choose to care for my health. The responsibility remains, but the language changes from external pressure to conscious participation. At other times, the should dissolves. I should want this becomes I do not want this and I am tired of pretending. That can be disturbing because it may affect relationships, work, identity, and the way others see us.
It can be unsettling. Letting go of an inherited expectation may disappoint people who benefited from our obedience or understood us through that role. When we revise the script, others may resist. Their discomfort does not prove the change is wrong, but we still have to examine the choice honestly.
This is where the connection with happiness becomes clear. A life crowded with borrowed obligations leaves little room for honest joy. Someone may be admired and well-behaved, yet feel removed from their own center because their choices and inner truth are constantly in conflict. The essay does not define happiness as doing whatever we want. It describes happiness as a form of alignment between values, choices, responsibilities, and the life we are actually living.
I think alignment is the right word. A meaningful life includes aspects such as duty, sacrifice, compromise, and care for others. But there is a difference between chosen responsibility and unconscious obedience. Examining should helps us identify which burdens belong to us and which we inherited without consent. There is relief in setting down expectations that were never ours. There is also strength in accepting the duties that genuinely are ours.
And both sides are necessary. If we reject every should, we become careless. If we obey every should, we become strangers to ourselves. The mature response is neither automatic obedience nor automatic rebellion. It is to pause, question the word, and ask it to reveal its source before we give it authority.
Precisely. Should can become a useful signal. It can show us where we are hiding or where conscience is genuinely asking something of us. The task is not to remove the word from our language. It is to stop allowing it to govern us without examination. Some shoulds protect health, responsibility, love, honesty, and dignity. Others may once have kept us acceptable or connected to the group, but they no longer fit the life we are becoming. Those can be acknowledged and set down.
Perhaps that is the clearest way to bring the conversation together. A more honest life begins when we stop treating every inherited instruction as sacred and stop treating every responsibility as oppression. We learn to hear the difference between conscience and conditioning, and between a duty that strengthens us and a script that slowly removes us from our own lives. The next time should appears, perhaps the first response does not need to be obedience or resistance. It can simply be a question: why don't I? The answer may reveal a real obstacle or a life we no longer want to pretend is ours. That clarity is where authorship begins. If today's conversation resonated and you want more perspective on emotional clarity or meaningful living, begin at the Our Approach page at happinesshippie.com. And please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for being part of this community. We will talk again soon.